AOC is stepping up her support of President Biden, emerging as a key surrogate for Biden's re-election campaign for younger people and for progressives. But while she has said she backs the president and his climate agenda, she's also been an outspoken critic of his handling of Israel's war against Hamas. AOC argues that Israel is committing genocide and has called on the administration to stop giving aid to Israel. This was her response when asked what she would say to young progressives or Arab Americans who say that they won't vote for Biden because of what he's enabled in Gaza.
I would rather be organizing under the conditions of Biden as an opponent on an issue than Trump, who is not, he seeks to dismantle American democracy.
Now take a listen to what President Biden said about AOC a couple of days ago at his Earth Day event.
And Representative Ocasio-Cortez in New York, you know, I learned a long time ago, listen to that lady. Listen to that lady. We're going to talk more about another part of the world, too, real quickly.
AOC's emerging surrogacy comes only after only 9% of young voters in a Harvard Kennedy poll said they think the U.S. is heading in the right direction. And an NPR poll found former President Trump up 2 points over him among millennial and Gen Z Americans. Losing as a Democrat young voters to Republicans is a particular slight, and it's hard to see this as being about much else than the war in Gaza. I do think there's some lingering resentments around student debt and some other issues. I don't want to be too overly broad here, but that's exactly why AOC has gotten so much flack from the left at this time. People are asking themselves, what does it mean for AOC to come out and say that she is noting the ICJ's report that this is a plausible genocide, that it is well within the realm of possibility that what our strongest ally Israel is doing is committing a genocide in Gaza with our money. And at the same time, to attend an Earth Day event, taking pictures and matching Biden aviators with Biden and Markey in a celebratory, happy, sunshiny fashion with the guy who is enabling that genocide.
What do you think she gets out of this? Like, why has this been her career, her optics arc to go from crusading anti-establishment, thorn in the side of the Democratic Party, taking down a figure who was very much a part of the establishment when she initially won her House race in, when was it, 2018, to someone who is quite comfortable being alongside, but not entirely holding her fire and failing to ever criticize him, but quite comfortable doing photo ops with him when he needs her. What motivates her, do you think?
Look, this is the liberalization of AOC. That kind of position is completely consistent with how liberals frequently position themselves politically. There's a kind of a vibe that we're good people. There's a vibe that we care about historically marginalized groups. There's a vibe that we want to protect the interests of LGBTQIA Americans and people across the world. But when it comes to brass tacks, some combination of mercenary personal interest and broader personal kind of economic interest always supersede the interest of the working class people who are overrepresented among all of the historically protected groups. So there's a use of issue politics, identity politics to distance yourself from Republicans at the same time that there's an enormous amount of overlap between the policies that they pursue in terms of economic policy and foreign policy. I saw a tweet recently this morning that went, I don't understand. We banned TikTok, but the kids still think ethnic cleansing is bad. Time to send in the cops, I guess. I'm a liberal. That is the kind of liberal stance. And I think, to more pointedly to your question, AOC, I think the good faith reading is she sees herself as someone who's playing an inside-outside game. I think she means it when she says, well, it's better to fight against Joe Biden than to fight against Donald Trump, so I want to make sure that Joe Biden is the president for the next 4 years. And there is some logic to that until you start to see that the reason we keep having Joe Bidens as candidates is because you give the Democratic Party permission to shut down primaries, to shut down debate. You give the media permission to run cover for Joe Biden, to shut down any conversations about any alternative candidates. And we never get anything better than Joe Biden. Biden then gets permission to go all the way up to the border of what it means to be Donald Trump, to deport more people than Donald Trump, to drill more oil than Donald Trump.
For all we know, to have
and
a
to
more
start-
hawkish
and to-
policy on Israel than Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know that he actually
it's up
does,
in the
but
air.
pro-Israel people are concerned that Donald Trump would not be willing to do what Joe Biden has done with respect to Israel and Gaza. I mean, they're legitimately spooked over it.
Yes.
As you should probably take them seriously.
Yes, he's blocking. This was another good another good tweet I saw by Dan Sheehan, who had accumulated the evidence of what Biden has been up to. We've been told Trump is coming, authoritarianism is coming, we have to save democracy. But he queued up just 4 newsy issues that are happening right now in Joe Biden's America. 1, Biden signs a law securing billions in U.S. aid for Ukraine, Israel. Obviously, we discussed that at length on the show. 2, U.S. refuses to back UN calls for probe into mass graves at Gaza hospital. Biden is doing that. Biden's America is refusing to even just block an inquiry into what's going on with these mass graves. 3, Biden administration oil drilling permits outpace Trump. That was a Politico report from earlier this year. 4,
That's a reason to vote for some of us, but yes.
Deportations of migrants rise to more than 142,000 under Biden, a Washington Post report from the very end of last year. So if you're talking to a liberal audience who you think is your base, these young voters that you expect to come out and carry you across the finish line again, you've been thumbing your nose at them for 3 years and you expect them not to notice. Well, they've noticed. The only question is why AOC, who is supposed to be their kind of avatar and representative in Congress, hasn't noticed and is still continuing to carry water for this administration.
Well, what she says there is because the threat of Donald Trump is so existential and he's trying to destroy democracy.
But this is the threat under Joe Biden. And that is the point. At what point are you basically gaslighting the public into believing that the alternative to Donald Trump is meaningfully different for them? And that's a question that people are wrestling with. Some people say yes. Some people say it's an edge case. Some people say, yes, Donald Trump is worse than Joe Biden, but it doesn't matter because the long-term consequence of constantly voting blue no matter who, no matter what terrible options are put in front of us, ultimately makes us worse off down the line. And at some point, you have to draw a line in the sand and say, if Democrats, if you want to win, you have to present us with a candidate that's worth voting for. That is on you, not on us, if Joe Biden isn't able to make it across the finish line.
Or maybe they don't. It's getting close again. The polls show Biden polling basically even with Trump nationally and real close in those swing states. So maybe marginalizing young people and the left and progressives and doing the opposite of what they want is a winning campaign strategy after all, as I suspected all along.
Well, what Democrats are celebrating is Joe Biden being no longer almost 10 points behind, or especially these swing states, to being just a few points behind. And as we know, in polls, Republicans outperform polls. So that still means that Joe Biden is behind. The sitting president is behind to a guy who's currently being indicted in 4 separate cases. And that is an indictment of Joe Biden as much as it is an indictment of Donald Trump.
Yeah. More rising right after this.